Okay everybody, so this is Simon Ward for Try247.com and I am here in Boulder, Colorado. The sun's shining, it's fantastic, and I'm sat next to a man who is an absolute genius. I thought I was reasonably intelligent, but this man makes me look like a kindergarten student. He's Professor Paul Larsen. He's from Canada. He works with a Yorkshireman, so that makes him almost as good as being a native Yorkshireman with just a different accent. And we're going to talk about performance, health and longevity, something a lot of athletes seem to forget about. Yeah, let's worry about performance, but let's marginalise health so we can be faster, and let's not worry about next year. But that's not your way, is it, Paul?
Well, it's not. You know, I will say that it used to be. You know, I came from that performance-only mindset, but one of the things that I guess I discovered, so my history is also working with the New Zealand Olympic team with my mate, the Yorkshireman, Dr. Dan Plews. One of the things that we kind of kept coming up across with was that we had unhealthy athletes ultimately, and it was derailing their performance. It was getting in the way of achieving what they wanted to achieve, and it wound up becoming a bit of a passion of mine.
So you're talking about unhealthy elite athletes here, and that's not something a lot of people think. They think that if you're an elite athlete, surely you've got to be healthy. That's a given. Yeah,
exactly, and that's one of the things Dr. Phil Maftone and I have written about in some journal articles, is the fact that health and performance are entirely separate things, or fitness and health are entirely separate things. So fitness is defined as just the ability to do a given performance task, right? Whether you're lifting a given weight, or you're riding at 300 watts for 20 minutes, that's a performance marker. Whereas health is actually when it describes more of a bit of a symbiosis between all of our different physiological systems. They're working in harmony. And you can have, I guess, fitness or performance without that health for a certain time, but it doesn't lead to longevity ultimately. It derails you eventually, and it doesn't give you a long career as an athlete.
So when I did my personal training course many years ago, they talked about health was an absence of disease or illness. And yeah, I surrounded by triathletes at home, age groupers who have asthma, they have little coughs, they get colds regularly, they have that little sort of upper respiratory tract problem that seems to never go on. They don't sleep very well. I see them finishing training, gorging on starchy carbs, you know, having highs and lows in their energy cycles throughout the day, as they're getting a caffeine hit and then the Mars bar hit, and then having a bit of a
and I was there too, man. And I bet you've probably been there as well for a time, right?
Yeah, well, when I started in this sport, I thought, yeah, I need pasta. I need to have rice for lunch, I need to have pasta for tea, I need to have bread all the time. I was like that starchy carb animal. But I had brown bread, so that's better, hey?
A little bit better, yeah.
So, okay, so we've got performance. Fit athletes aren't necessarily healthy. And if we're not healthy, then that's going to affect our longevity, surely, because we're just going to burn out sooner.
Yeah. And one of the big things that winds up, I guess, happening is you develop this, this chronic inflammation in your body. And one of the key links with that is what you were mentioning before, with all the pasty carbs and all the sugar and whatnot.
So carbs are bad for you?
No, carbs. There's not one that's bad for you versus good for you. I'm not going to label it like that. But one of the big things is this level of individuality that's in all of us. So sometimes too many carbs can be bad for us, especially for those of us who have abused our insulin pathways in the past, such as myself, where you're always hitting your pancreas and your insulin center with that high sugar, blood sugar or glucose level, and then out comes all this pouring of insulin, and to get rid of the sugar that's not healthy for you. And that works for a good level of time. It works super well when you're young, but eventually over time you develop resistance to it. And when you develop resistance to it, you also develop this chronic inflammation. And what you also develop, and we see this in so many people, is higher levels of abdominal visceral fat within your organs, and the beer belly that we always see.
So this is why we see triathletes who are doing an awful lot of training. They're doing 10-15 hours a week, which may not be a lot for triathletes, but in terms of health body guidelines, it's way more than we need to be doing to keep ourselves fit.
Sure.
And yet we look at them and we think, well, why isn't that guy lean if he's doing all that training? So you're saying that's not to do with the volume of training, that's to do with the type of food he's eating and the way the body's depositing that.
Yeah, and the way his body is responding to that. It's no longer responding well enough to the high volume of carbohydrate intake. So that individual with the overfat in their visceral organs needs to lower their level.
Okay, so is it, now right under here.
Right under here.
You've got this little.
Will this offend your viewers?
No, I'm sure it won't.
Okay,
this won't. So this is a Dexcom G5.
Yep. Talks to my iPhone or your iWatch now. Apple has, they've invested heavily in this, and this is where they're going in the future and whatnot. They realize it's super important. So yeah, and it talks to my phone, tells me what my blood glucose is in, and
so Paul's blood glucose at the moment is 3.1 millimoles. So if he sounds like he's been drinking, it's only 4 o'clock in the afternoon here in Boulder. He hasn't been drinking. In fact, he's got some caffeine there,
some coffee,
but
some cream in it.
It's because he hasn't been fueling very well, which isn't so good for a guy who's talking to us about nutrition.
Probably not, but I did do a 4.5 hour ride today.
Fasted,
peak to peak. Fueled up after, but obviously haven't done enough.
At altitude.
At altitude, yeah. It was a real solid ride. Yeah.
So I'm pretty certain, Paul, that I'm enthusiastic to learn about this, and you're clearly enthusiastic to share this message. So we could probably speak all day, but we haven't got all day.
Yep.
So if there's some short, sharp lessons that we can give our listeners, one each for performance, longevity, and health. So let's start, because performance isn't going to be optimal unless we've got good health first, and we're not going to have good longevity, we're not going to have great performance in 5-10 years time unless we've got good health. So let's go health tip first, then performance, then longevity.
Sure, that should go well. So health tip first is optimize your blood glucose level if you can figure out what that is. And here's one way to do it, but there's other markers you can get. Is just a finger prick of your blood glucose in the morning, and getting a hold of your how much carbohydrate is optimal for you is going to be I guess a real game changer for your health, because so much now is linked to high levels of insulin. High levels of insulin have all these downstream consequences in the future to becoming over fat and I guess all the various metabolic diseases, including cancer, atherosclerosis, dementia, and on it kind of goes. So
that's about, some of that's longevity as well.
That goes into longevity as well, but I mean that's starting with the health thing.
So I saw something that you'd written recently on Training Peaks. It was an article about Peter Attia.
Yeah, the Peter Attia diet.
Peter Attia diet, and it's a two-part article on Training Peaks. But you talked about when you were measuring your blood glucose, even things like getting stressed out can raise your blood glucose and give you spikes, and then afterwards you get a crash. So just being a bit more even with your temper and your excitement throughout the day will help that blood sugar.
Yeah, developing, I guess, using some of the meditation philosophies and whatnot to be able to control your breathing. So you're controlling your stress levels. So when you get stressed, however that might happen, your cortisol levels go up. Cortisol is a glucocorticoid, so notice the word glucose in that. So its job is to get glucose out. And same exact problem. So
okay, so check your blood sugar.
Yeah, if you can check your blood sugar and your response to different foods and stress, that's really helpful. Keep an eye on the space with respect to the Dexcom and Apple, because they've gone all in on this, and they're going to be even becoming more cheaper and less invasive in the future. So if you care about your health and the others, you'll be able to monitor that a lot easier in the future.
Okay, so what impact is it going to have on performance then?
Sure. So again, along the same lines, you want a good balance of carb and fat oxidation. So for example, there's not a lot of people out there that go for a 4.5-5 hour ride fasted in the hills at altitude and can come back. It's no big deal, right? Average probably 212 normalized powers or thereabouts, right? So that's performance as it is. So that's because I'm fat adapted. I've got a very good good, metabolically flexible, and that relates to the fact that I've been fat adapted for a long time. So I guess having great knowledge of my blood glucose, it keeps my insulin low, and it upregulates my ability to oxidize fat as a fuel. I'm never reliant on I guess carbohydrate fuel for performance if I need it.
So what we're really doing is building up our resistance to, or let's say removing our dependence on carbs.
Yep.
By slowly increasing the amount of training
Yep.
that we can go without carbohydrates. So leave the carbs at home,
Yep.
or maybe put them in your back pocket,
Yep.
just in case you hit the wall.
That's right. And I know you told me as well that you're doing the same sort of thing. You're up to 5.5 hours you went.
Yeah, but the downside of that is you've got to be really, if it is a downside, you've got to be much more mindful of your effort going up steep hills.
Yeah, you do.
You can't go racing people.
Yep.
And doing surges, because you're tipping into your glycogen, and then you've got no way of replacing that. So you've got to be more mindful. Now that's great for Ironman, for pacing, because you don't want to have big surges. You want to have a steady pace throughout.
Yeah. This is ideal for 70.3 in Ironman. This is really the bomb. This is what I use with my pros, and yeah, it goes pretty well.
So we're talking about slowly removing that dependence on carbs. Leave them at home. Start off fasted in the morning, just having some coffee, and then go out for a ride early in the morning.
Yeah.
Would you say riding is better than running, because running's much more energetic in terms of calories?
Usually you won't be going that long with the riding as well, right? I think it's good to do both.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, just progress it like you would progress any sort of exercise stimulus. So, maybe don't go fasted for 5 hours off the bat, right? But build up for that. If you go for, depending on where you're at, but go 2 hours, go 3 hours, 4 hours, etc.
I've been trying this since we met in Hawaii last year, so we're almost 10 months into that now, aren't we?
And so you progressed it right well.
Yeah,
It didn't happen overnight, did it?
No. Okay, so we've got the health aspect is changing your diet, thinking about blood sugar. We've got the performance by reducing carbs and trying to train your body to fuel more on fat, because fat's pretty much an unlimited source for most humans.
We've got loads of stores, right?
Okay, so then the longevity thing, because we all want to live to be 100, don't we?
Yeah,
but I don't want to be decrepit and living to 100 in a
No.
home on a oxygen mask.
No, you want to be functional and with it cognitively, but again, it's the same sort of principles. This is the crazy thing. This is why they all loop around and sync together. So the longevity relates to the fact that if you are keeping your blood glucose stable and relatively low, you are lowering all of the various, your risk for all of those various diseases that I mentioned before, because so much of the research now links the high glycemic response, the insulin resistance, and the inflammation to all of these various metabolic diseases, including cancer, atherosclerosis, dementia, and on it goes.
So there you have it. Some really good reasons to start looking at your nutrition for your current health, your performance in the next few months, and your longevity. What's going to happen to your health in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It's almost like a pension where you're investing in it every week so you can use it again when you're a bit older.
Brilliant, I like it.
Okay, so this is Simon and Paul checking out, but before you go, I'm just going to make you really jealous, right? So you can see that we're sitting here in this is the university stadium. It's got capacity for 20,000 people here. Now think about that in terms of the championship football teams, and the rugby, professional rugby and rugby league teams in the UK. They don't have that much capacity. So these are some of the seats behind us. I'm going to get you to have a look and see.
Check out the setting too, eh?
Yeah, look at the mountains in the distance. So this is,
doesn't get much better.
yeah, so here we are, back. Simon Ward for Try 24/7.
Prof from Please and Prof.
Professor Paul Larsen, one of the brightest men in Boulder, sat in these seats today. Well, actually, out of the two of us, he's the brightest man.
Whatever.
Okay, thanks for watching, folks. Thanks, Paul.
All right, pleasure.
See you guys. Bye-bye.